Hey everyone, welcome back to the Deep Dive. Before we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel and click that bell icon so you never miss out on our future explorations. Today we're going deep on something pretty important, especially if you're a UPSC aspirant or just someone who wants to understand India a little bit better.
Right.
We're talking about India's mineral and energy resources.
Absolutely.
We've got a whole bunch of reports and analysis, and with the help of our expert,
Yeah.
we're going to try to break down this really complex and fascinating topic.
It's going to be great.
So think of it this way.
Okay.
Imagine India is like this giant treasure chest,
Okay, yeah.
just filled with everything,
Yeah.
from the iron ore that builds our cities to the coal that powers our industries and even the glittering diamonds, for jewelry and stuff like that.
Right.
So we're going to uncover what these resources are, where they are, and why they're so important for India right now and in the future. And to help us navigate all this, we have our expert who is amazing at explaining really complicated things in a way that we can all understand.
Well, I'm happy to be here, and I think you're right. India's mineral and energy resources are incredibly diverse, and really understanding them is key to understanding the country's economic potential, its challenges and its place in the world.
Absolutely. So let's start with the basics.
Okay.
What makes India such a mineral-rich country?
Mm-hmm.
One of the reports pointed to its unique geological history,
Right.
which goes back millions and millions of years.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like different chapters of Earth's history are kind of imprinted on different parts of the country.
Yeah.
And each of those chapters contributes to this really unique mix of minerals that we find today.
That's exactly right. If you look at the older part of India, the peninsular region, it's mostly igneous and metamorphic rocks formed under intense heat and pressure eons ago. And those are the rocks that have like the really valuable metallic minerals like iron ore, manganese, bauxite. And then if you look up north, those plains, those are much younger geologically, formed from alluvial deposits brought down by the rivers. And so they're great for agriculture, but not so much for minerals.
So it's almost like a geological timeline.
Yeah.
You can see different periods of Earth's history
Right.
and the riches they hold in different parts of the country.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not just about where these minerals formed, right?
Right.
One of the reports highlighted three kind of key things about minerals that are important to understand.
Yeah.
They're unevenly distributed.
Yes.
The better the quality, the smaller the quantity.
That's right.
And most importantly, they don't last forever. They can run out.
They're exhaustible. And that's a really important point, especially for a country like India that's developing so quickly. That uneven distribution means that some areas have a lot of minerals and some don't.
Right.
And so you have some regions that are booming economically
Yep.
and others that are left behind.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that trade-off between using the best resources quickly and managing them sustainably so they'll last, that's a challenge for every country, really.
Absolutely. So let's break down all these minerals into categories. One source talked about metallic and non-metallic minerals. What's the difference?
Well, metallic minerals are the ones that give us metals,
Oh,
like
wow.
in their raw form. So you get iron from iron ore,
Yeah.
aluminum from bauxite, copper from copper ore. These are like the building blocks of everything. Infrastructure, industries,
Yeah.
all our gadgets.
So metallic minerals are basically the foundation of any kind of industrial development.
Pretty much, yeah.
And what about non-metallic minerals? What are those?
Well, non-metallic minerals are super diverse. You've got your fuel minerals like coal and petroleum that's basically stored sunlight from millions of years ago that we now use for energy.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah, and then you have tons of others like limestone, which is essential from making cement,
Yeah.
mica. That was historically really important for electrical insulation.
Okay.
And things like gypsum, which you use in construction and fertilizers.
That's incredible. Even the things we don't really think about, they're still super important.
Yeah.
Like one source even mentioned that Taj Mahal, which is like this iconic symbol of India's architecture.
Yeah,
And it's basically made of marble, which is a non-metallic mineral.
that's right.
So it's just incredible to think about how all these different types of minerals are a part of our lives.
He really is.
So let's talk a little bit about how these minerals are actually formed. One source talked about the Chotanagpur Plateau and the Damodar Valley as examples.
Okay.
What makes them so special?
The Chotanagpur Plateau is a great example of how different geological processes can create different minerals. It's super rich in metallic minerals because of its ancient igneous and metamorphic rocks. And then you have the Damodar Valley,
Yeah.
which is right there in the plateau, and it's a perfect example of how ancient life can turn into energy resources. You know, it's full of coal,
Wow.
which formed from dense forests millions of years ago. Those forests died, they got buried under sediment, and over a really long time, they transformed into the coal that we use today.
That's wild. Events from millions of years ago are shaping our energy landscape today.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But India is huge, and obviously these minerals aren't spread out evenly.
Right.
So conveniently, the report kind of breaks India down into these 5 mineral-rich regions.
Okay.
The north, the central, the southeast, southwest, and northwest.
I like it.
And each one has its own unique story in terms of the minerals that are found there.
Absolutely. It's like each region has its own specialty when it comes to minerals.
Yeah.
And that has a huge impact, not just on where we get the resources from, but also how regions develop, how industries grow, and even political stuff.
So let's start exploring these regions one by one.
Sounds good.
First up, the north, specifically that Chotanagpur Plateau that we talked about.
Okay.
It's got iron ore, chromium, mica, and it's also home to like 90% of the world's kyanite reserves,
Wow.
which is this mineral used to make materials that can withstand crazy high temperatures. India is really dominating in that area.
That northern belt is like the industrial heartland of India, mainly because of all that high-quality iron ore. You know, states like Jharkhand and Odisha, they have these massive mines. And those mines feed the steel plants.
Yeah.
And the steel plants build everything we need.
Makes sense.
And then you've got mica.
Yeah.
And when you think of mica, you got to think of Kodarma and Jharkhand. For a long time, it was the center of mica production. So you can see how these geological advantages can make a region really important economically.
Yeah, it's really fascinating to see how specific minerals are tied to specific regions in India.
Ah,
So next up, we have the Central Belt.
okay.
That's Chhattisgarh, the Godavari-Warda Valley.
Uh-huh.
What's hidden there?
Well, the Central Belt kind of adds to India's mineral diversity.
Okay.
Chhattisgarh is known as India's rice bowl,
Oh, yeah.
but it's also got a lot of iron ore, limestone, and coal.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Dali Rajhara and Bailadila mines are great examples of how iron ore can shape an entire region's economy.
So we're seeing a trend here.
Yeah.
Different regions specialize in different minerals,
Uh-huh.
and all those different pieces come together to create this whole picture of India's mineral wealth.
Exactly.
Okay, what about the Southeast? What's special about that region?
The southeast, so that's like Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, and Tamil Nadu. That area has a really diverse mix of minerals. You see iron ore coming back in the Bellary Hospit region of Karnataka.
Okay.
And Andhra Pradesh stands out for its mica, manganese, and lignite coal.
Oh,
And then Tamil Nadu has lignite from the Neyveli mines.
interesting.
Even lower grade coal is important for energy production.
It's like this big network of minerals all connected, and
Yeah.
each region has its own special role to play.
Mm.
What about the Southwest? That makes me think of beaches in Goa and the busy city of Mumbai.
Right. The Southwest is mostly Karnataka, Goa, and Maharashtra, and it also has a lot of different minerals. Karnataka has a bunch, including iron ore, manganese, and limestone. And Goa, even though we think of it as a tourist spot, it has a lot of iron ore too. And then Maharashtra, specifically the Ratnagiri region, contributes to India's iron ore production as well.
Got it. Okay, and finally we've got the Northwest. I think of deserts in Rajasthan and all the industries in Gujarat.
Okay. Yeah.
What about that region?
Well, the Northwest has a slightly different kind of mineral wealth. Gujarat and Rajasthan have a lot of petroleum and natural gas,
Really?
making them really important for India's energy. So it's not just about the minerals that we use to build things, but also the fuels that power our modern lives.
Yeah, that's a good point. Minerals aren't just the things we use to build stuff, but also the energy sources that drive our industries
Yeah.
and transportation. We've talked about these 5 major mineral-rich regions, but the reports also highlighted specific minerals like iron ore, manganese, copper, and bauxite. Let's talk about why those are so important. What makes iron ore such a big deal?
Well, iron ore is the foundation of modern industry.
Okay.
It's how we make steel. And
Right.
steel is used in everything.
Yeah.
Buildings, bridges, cars, machinery.
It's everywhere.
And India is the second largest producer of hematite,
Wow.
which is a really good quality iron ore. That's why India is so important globally when it comes to steel.
So one mineral can have a huge impact on a country's economy.
Absolutely.
What about manganese? It's not as famous as iron ore,
Right.
but it's also really important in making steel, right?
Yeah, manganese is super important. It may not be as well known, but it's like a key supporting player. It acts as an alloy, which means it's added to steel to make it stronger, harder, and more resistant to wear and tear. So it makes steel suitable for a lot of different uses.
So it's kind of like the unsung hero of the steel world.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay, next we have copper. What makes copper so important?
Well, copper is essential because it conducts electricity so well.
Yeah.
And our world is becoming more and more electrified. Think about all the wires in our homes, the circuits in our electronics, the power grids that keep everything running. Copper is essential for all of that.
It's amazing how crucial a single metal is for something as basic as electricity.
Yeah.
Okay, and finally, bauxite. It's what we use to make aluminum, which is a metal you see literally everywhere these days.
That's right. Bauxite is the ore from which we extract aluminum. It's light, strong, and doesn't corrode easily.
Yeah.
And that's why it's used in so many things, from airplanes and cars to packaging and construction materials. And India has a lot of bauxite,
Okay.
which is why it's an important supplier globally.
It's fascinating to see how each of these minerals plays such a specific and important role in our modern world. So in this first part of our deep dive, we've gone from the geological processes that created India's mineral wealth to the specific minerals that drive its industries. But we're not done yet. Stay tuned as we explore those more glamorous minerals like gold and diamonds.
Ooh.
And then we'll jump into the world of India's energy resources.
So before we jump into India's energy resources,
Okay.
let's take a quick look at some of the more precious minerals.
Ooh, fun.
We've talked about all those minerals that are essential for industry.
Yeah, like the workhorses.
Yeah, exactly. But now let's talk about the ones that have captivated people for centuries.
Right.
Gold and diamonds.
Yeah, it is interesting how these minerals might not be as industrially important as iron or bauxite,
Right.
but they still have so much cultural and economic significance.
Absolutely.
Like one source talked about gold's historical role as currency and how it's still valuable even in our digital world.
It's true.
What's the story of gold in India?
Gold has always been special in Indian culture. It's not just about jewelry. It's a symbol of wealth, prosperity, even spiritual purity. India might not be the biggest producer of gold in the world, but it's got a long history of gold mining, and it's still one of the biggest consumers of gold.
It's fascinating how gold is about more than just its material value.
Yeah.
It's really tied to beliefs and traditions.
Mm-hmm.
The source mentioned the Kolar gold field in Karnataka,
Okay.
which used to be one of the deepest gold mines in the world,
Oh.
and other areas like Hooghly and Ramgiri. It feels like these places hold more than just gold.
Right.
They hold pieces of India's history and its connection to this precious metal.
Yeah, and it's not just about history. Gold is still seen as a safe investment,
Okay.
something people turn to when the economy is uncertain. That demand drives the global gold market, and India is a big part of that.
So even with crypto and all the digital stuff, gold still matters.
Absolutely.
Now let's talk about diamonds,
Ooh, sparkly.
another mineral that people love.
Yeah, they're fascinating.
The source talk about their brilliance, how hard they are, and how they're even used in industry. What's the story of diamonds in India?
Diamonds are kind of a paradox.
Okay.
They're formed under immense pressure deep inside the earth,
Wow.
but they represent beauty and luxury. India's been mining diamonds for a long time, from places like the Panna Diamond Belt in Madhya Pradesh
Yeah.
and the Krishna River Basin in Andhra Pradesh. These areas have been producing diamonds for centuries.
It's crazy how these delicate-looking gems
Mm-hmm.
are actually the hardest natural substance we know of.
I know, right?
The source even said that their hardness makes them important for industrial tools,
Right, yeah.
like for cutting and polishing. So they're useful for more than just looking pretty.
Definitely. Diamonds are used in a lot of industries. And even though India might not be a top diamond producer,
Okay.
it has a huge diamond processing industry. They cut and polish rough diamonds,
Yeah.
turning them into the beautiful gems we see in jewelry.
It seems like India might not always be the biggest producer of certain minerals,
Right.
but it's often really important in processing them and making them more valuable.
Exactly.
So we've explored the world of minerals from those essential industrial ones to those precious gems.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's shift gears and talk about the energy resources that fuel India's growth and its future.
Okay, let's do it. That's a really important transition. Minerals are the building blocks of the physical world, but energy resources are the fuel that makes everything go. Industries, transportation, our homes.
Yeah, it all needs energy.
And that brings us to coal, the king of conventional energy in India.
Yeah, coal has been the dominant energy source in India for a long time,
It has.
but now it's facing a lot of scrutiny because of its environmental impact.
That's right.
One source described it as a double-edged sword,
I like that.
essential for development, but a major contributor to pollution and climate change.
Mhm.
What's the deal with coal in India?
Well, India's relationship with coal is complicated. It's the most abundant fossil fuel in the country,
Yeah,
and it's played a huge role in powering India's growth. But as the world becomes more aware of climate change,
right.
India has to balance its need for energy with its responsibility to the environment.
It's like walking a tightrope,
Yeah.
trying to keep the lights on while making sure there's a future for everyone.
Yeah.
The source talked about Gondwana coal, which makes up a big chunk of India's reserves. It's amazing to think that those coal deposits formed over 250 million years ago from ancient forests. We're burning ancient sunlight to power our modern world.
That's a great way to think about it. And it's important to remember that coal isn't all the same.
Okay.
The source talked about different types of coal based on how much carbon they contain and how much energy they produce.
Right.
You've got lignite, which is a lower grade coal,
Uh,
bituminous coal, which is used a lot in power plants, and anthracite, which is the highest grade.
so it's like a coal hierarchy.
Kinda.
Anthracite at the top, with the most energy, but also the hardest to find.
Exactly.
The source also showed where coal is found in India.
Yeah,
States like Jharkhand, Odisha, and Chhattisgarh are the big producers.
they are.
It's clear that coal is really important to India's economy and geography.
Absolutely. Where those coal reserves are has shaped where industries are located,
Right.
what the infrastructure is like, even how different regions have developed economically.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But coal mining also comes with challenges.
Right. Like what?
Well, the source talked about the impact on the environment,
Uh-huh.
the dangers of rat hole mining,
Yeah, I've heard about that.
and the need to mine coal in a way that's sustainable.
That's really important. It sounds like the coal industry in India is at a turning point,
Yeah.
facing pressure to clean up and become more sustainable. But before we go deeper into that, let's move on into another big energy source, petroleum,
Okay.
the fuel that powers our transportation.
Yeah. Petroleum, or crude oil, is another fossil fuel that shaped our world.
Right.
It's a mix of hydrocarbons that formed over millions of years from the remains of ancient marine life. Basically, it's ancient sunlight stored as a liquid.
Wow, that's incredible. The gas we put in our cars comes from tiny creatures that lived millions of years ago.
I know, it's wild.
The source talked about how petroleum is found trapped in underground formations,
Uh-huh.
sometimes deep underground or even offshore.
Yeah.
It mentioned Mumbai High, the Kambat Gulf, and Assam as key oil-producing areas in India.
Those are some great examples of the different places where India gets petroleum. Mumbai High, which is off the coast of Maharashtra,
Okay.
shows how advanced India is when it comes to offshore oil exploration. The Kambat Gulf in Gujarat has both onshore and offshore production, and Assam, up in the northeast, is actually the oldest oil-producing region in India.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Hmm.
So it's like with minerals,
Yeah.
India's petroleum resources are spread out.
Right.
Each region has its own unique geology and potential for production.
Exactly.
But the source also mentioned OPEC,
Ah, yes.
the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, and how they can control global oil prices. How does that affect India?
Well, OPEC is a group of oil-producing countries that controls a lot of the global oil production.
Okay.
And their decisions about how much oil to produce can have a big impact on prices all over the world.
Yeah.
India imports a lot of oil,
Right.
so it's really vulnerable to those price changes.
I see.
It highlights how dependent India is on other countries for energy.
That's a good reminder that energy security is a big deal for India.
It is.
It's not just about having enough resources,
Right.
but also about being able to control where they come from and how much they cost.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about another fossil fuel, natural gas. People say it's a cleaner alternative to coal.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
What's the story with natural gas in India?
Well, natural gas is a pretty versatile fuel. You can use it for power generation, heating, all sorts of industrial processes.
Yeah.
And it produces less carbon dioxide than coal when you burn it.
So that's a good thing.
Yeah, which is why it's a good option for India as it tries to reduce its carbon footprint.
So natural gas is becoming more popular as a more environmentally friendly choice.
It is.
The source talked about the Krishna-Godavari Basin, the Brahmaputra Valley, and the Barmer District in Rajasthan as major natural gas producing areas.
Okay.
But it also said that even though India has these resources, it still relies a lot on imports to meet its growing demand for natural gas.
Yeah. India's natural gas production has gone up in recent years, but it's still not enough. India needs to explore and develop more natural gas resources,
Right.
and it needs to diversify its energy sources so it's not so reliant on imports.
It's like trying to solve a puzzle,
It is.
balancing economic growth with environmental concerns and energy security. The source even talked about unconventional hydrocarbons, like shale gas and coal bed methane,
Uh-huh.
which have potential but also challenges. It's clear that things are changing rapidly in India's energy landscape,
Yeah, for sure.
with new technologies and resources emerging all the time. But before we dive into the world of renewable energy,
Okay.
let's take a quick break. Stay tuned as we explore how India is harnessing the power of the sun, wind, and water to create a more sustainable future.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've covered India's minerals and conventional energy,
Mhm.
and now we're moving into non-conventional renewable energy.
Right, the exciting stuff.
These hold a lot of promise for a cleaner, more sustainable future.
Yeah, and India's making big moves in this area.
They are. It's great to see.
So let's start with nuclear energy.
Okay.
It's a bit controversial,
It can be, yeah.
but the source mentioned that India has a long history with nuclear research and development,
Yeah,
and it has reserves of uranium and thorium,
right.
the fuels for nuclear power. What's the status of nuclear energy in India today?
Well, nuclear energy is complicated,
Yeah, for sure.
but it's definitely a part of India's energy mix.
Okay.
There are a bunch of nuclear power plants running already and more being planned. The challenge is making sure they're safe,
Yeah.
dealing with the waste responsibly,
Oh.
and addressing people's concerns about it. India's working on all those things.
So it's powerful, but we have to be careful.
Exactly.
Now let's talk about something a bit more familiar. Solar energy.
Okay.
India gets tons of sunshine, so it seems like a perfect place for solar power. What's been happening in that area?
India's solar energy sector has been growing like crazy. Yeah, it's now one of the world's biggest solar power producers.
Wow.
With massive solar parks, rooftop solar installations, and big government programs pushing it forward.
That's great to hear.
Yeah, it's a really exciting time for solar in India.
The report even mentioned the International Solar Alliance,
Oh, yeah.
a global platform that India started to encourage countries to work together on solar energy. That shows real leadership.
It does.
But solar isn't the only game in town.
Nope.
What about wind power?
India is doing really well with wind power, too.
Oh, okay.
It's one of the top producers globally, with wind farms all along the coastlines and in the hills. Of course, there are challenges with wind power.
Like where?
Like, it's not always windy.
Right.
So the power supply can be inconsistent.
Yeah.
But India is investing in ways to store energy and make the power grid smarter.
So they're finding ways to work around those problems.
Exactly. They're on it.
Now let's talk about a source that's been around for a while in India. Hydropower.
Okay.
Lots of rivers.
Yeah.
History of dam construction. Seems like hydropower is a good fit for India.
Hydropower has been a big part of India's electricity for a long time.
Yeah.
But we've learned that big dams can be bad for the environment and for people.
Yeah, that's true.
So India is moving towards smaller hydropower projects. They use the natural flow of rivers, which is better for the environment and communities.
So it's about finding that balance again.
Yeah.
Energy production and environmental responsibility.
It's always about balance.
As we wrap up this deep dive on India's resources, it's clear that energy security is a major concern.
It is, for sure.
How's India dealing with that?
Energy security is a big challenge for India on multiple levels.
Okay.
We're still importing a lot of our energy, which makes us vulnerable to global prices and politics.
Right.
So to deal with that, India is trying to get energy from more sources,
Right.
produce more energy domestically,
Uh-huh.
use energy more efficiently,
Makes sense.
and team up with other countries.
It's a multi-pronged approach.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about building a more resilient and sustainable energy future.
It sounds like India has a plan,
They do.
and they're taking a comprehensive approach to meet their needs while transitioning to cleaner energy. Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into India's mineral and energy resources. We've covered a ton of information,
We have.
from how these resources were formed to the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead.
It's been a great discussion.
It really has. This is a topic that's essential for understanding India today and where it's headed.
I agree. Understanding these resources, how they're distributed, what they mean for the economy and the environment, and the policies around them, it's important for anyone interested in India's development.
Thanks for joining us on this journey.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you've learned a lot about this fascinating and crucial part of India. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more deep dives on topics that matter. Until next time, stay curious.